Baseball has been around for such a long time that it's become synonymous with American history, for both the good and the bad. While baseball has often been a marker for social progress in America, it has just as often acted as a levy against it. For decades, Major League Baseball was kept exclusively white, to the detriment of the sport and the country at large. Through this bigotry, a collection of various black baseball leagues, known as the Negro Leagues, were formed to give an opportunity to play ball to those who were so disgracefully excluded. Today we'll be talking about a team from Detroit that were charter members of two of these leagues. A team that saw 4 different iterations over a 42-year period, and in total featured 9 Hall of Famers. Welcome back to The Bad Baseball Fan. Let's talk about the history of the Detroit Stars. Major League Baseball was founded in 1876, and while there was never a codified rule excluding people of color from professional play, there was always an unwritten understanding between the ball clubs that the sport would remain exclusively white. While a handful of people of color played professional baseball prior to 1900, this color barrier would exist until 1947, when Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby finally smashed it once and for all. To compensate for this, non-white baseball players were forced to create their own teams, and eventually their own leagues, known collectively today as the Negro Leagues. One of the most prominent and successful figures during this segregated era was legendary pitcher, manager, entrepreneur, and member of the 1981 class of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, Rube Foster. Foster spent his post-playing career promoting the creation of black baseball clubs and leagues. According to the Detroit Historical Society, Foster, along with his friend and fellow businessman Tenny Blount, founded the Detroit Stars in early 1919. From the onset, the club called Mack Park home. Located at the southeast corner of Fairview Avenue and Mack Avenue on Detroit's east side, this field would play host to the Stars until 1929. The team played its inaugural game on April 20th, 1919 against the Maxwell Internationals, who were an all-white semi-pro team that had won the Detroit City Championship the year prior. The Stars won the game, getting the organization off to a winning start. Going into the 1920 season, Rube Foster wanted to create an organized league for black baseball clubs. On February 13th of that year, a coalition of team owners formed the Negro National League. This is, today, the earliest of the Negro Leagues to be officially recognized as a major league, and initially featured Rube Foster's Chicago American Giants, Tenny Blount's Detroit Stars, C.I. Taylor's Indianapolis ABCs, Abel Linares and Tinty Molina's Cuban Stars, J.L. Wilkinson's Kansas City Monarchs, Charles A. Mills' St. Louis Giants, Moses Moore's Dayton Marcos, and Charles Green's Chicago Giants. While the teams that were a part of the league would come and go, the Negro National League was the first black league to survive more than one season, existing until 1931. The league, as you may have noticed by the teams participating, was primarily located in the Midwest. Its success, according to the Detroit Tigers official website, may have had something to do with the Great Migration during the 1920s, when large numbers of African Americans migrated to the Midwestern industrial cities. Back to the Detroit Stars, the ball club played its inaugural game in the NNL against the Cuban Stars on May 15, 1920, at Mack Park, where they won the game. The team went on to have a phenomenal inaugural season in the league. As a matter of fact, it was arguably the best season they would ever have, finishing second in the league behind Foster's American Giants with a 38-27 record. The Stars, participating in the NNL until its folding following the 1931 season, managed another second-place finish in 1930 and finished over 500 in all but 2 seasons. While they may have never won a championship, the Stars featured some incredible ball players during their time. Starting with Andy "Lefty" Cooper, a Hall of Fame left-handed pitcher who is recognized as the Negro League's all-time saves leader. Cooper spent 2 separate stints in Detroit, the first from 1920 to 1927, and the second for the 1930 season. Also on that 1920 team with Cooper was Hall of Fame first baseman and manager Pete Hill. Hill was actually a part of the inaugural Stars team in 1919 after he was sent there from the Chicago American Giants by team owner Rube Foster. He spent 3 years in Detroit as both the first baseman and manager, overseeing the second place finish in 1920. 2 years after Pete Hill's departure, the Stars acquired Norman "Turkey" Stearns, arguably the greatest player to ever play for the Stars. The Hall of Fame center fielder was a professional baseball player from 1920 to 1937, during which he had 2 stints in Detroit. The first from 1923 to 1931, and again in 1937 as a player and manager for a Stars team that was only around for 1 season. As a Detroit Star, Turkey Stearns had an All-Star appearance, won 2 batting titles, and led the league in home runs 4 times. Also making 2 stints with the Stars, and also in the Hall of Fame, was Cuban-born outfielder Cristobal Torriente. Torriente spent a short amount of time with the Stars in 1920 and returned to the team for full seasons in 1927 and 1928. Like I said before, this iteration of the Detroit Stars played ball until 1931, but that time was rather tumultuous. The team changed ownership twice during this period. The first in 1925 when an African-American man by the name of Steve Pierce purchased the team from Tenny Blount. Pierce owned the team until 1928 when he sold the ball club to a white businessman and the owner of Mack Stadium, John Rosing. Beyond changes in ownership, the team was forced to move to a new location following the 1929 season after a fire in July destroyed the main grandstand at Mack Park, and opposition from local white residents prevented its rebuilding. Rosing had a new stadium built in Hamtramck, roughly 5 miles north of downtown Detroit. Hamtramck Stadium would remain a mainstay of amateur and semi-professional baseball in the Detroit area until the 1990s when it was closed. In the past decade, it's been restored to its former glory and is now serving the community once again. Due to financial pressures from the Great Depression, the Negro National League and the Detroit Stars folded following the 1931 season. The league and the team would be reformed in 1933, but there was a void that needed filling for 1932. Enter the East-West League and come Posey's Detroit Wolves. The team managed the best record in the league, but due to financial pressure, the league collapsed quickly. The Wolves featured 5 Hall of Famers: Ray Brown, Mule Suttles, Joe Williams, Willie Wells, and the fastest man in baseball history, Cool Papa Bell. Going into 1933, Hamtramck Stadium looked to be vacant, but luckily for Detroit, Candy Jim Taylor brought his Indianapolis ABC's team to Detroit shortly after opening day and renamed them to the Stars. This team, like the Wolves before them, lasted only 1 season, finishing with a 15-24 record before disbanding. Detroit would be without Negro League Baseball for the next 3 full seasons before the 3rd iteration of the Detroit Stars was created. This team was a charter member of the Negro American League and played their games at DeQuinder Park rather than Hamtramck Stadium. As mentioned earlier, this team featured the return of Turkey Stearns, but unfortunately, this ball club followed suit with the Wolves and 1933 Stars only playing 1 season. And just like the 1933 Detroit Stars, this squad only managed a 15-24 record before folding. The 1937 Detroit Stars would be the last major Negro League team to ever play in Detroit. The Detroit Stars likeness would be seen again though starting in 1954 as a minor Negro League franchise. Owned by Ted Raspberry, an African-American ballplayer, manager, and businessman, this version of the Stars were originally in Indianapolis before Raspberry bought them and moved them to Detroit. The team was renamed to the Detroit Clowns for the 1958 season before reverting back to the Stars in 1959. In 1960 and 1961, the team played home games in both Detroit and New Orleans before folding for good. This Detroit Stars team would be the last Negro League team to play in Detroit. The Detroit Stars and the teams that spun off of them are integral to the rich history of not just Detroit, but the Midwest and America at large. During the time of segregation, these teams provided entertainment to an ostracized community, and until recently, their history has been intentionally lost to time. In the past few decades, there has been an effort to recognize the Negro Leagues for their contributions to American culture. We've seen teams recognized by Major League ball clubs, such as the Detroit Tigers donning Stars uniforms on Negro Leagues weekend. And now, thanks to decades of work from historians, culminating in the Negro League Statistical Review Committee, baseball is finally fully recognizing those whose work is foundational to the game we love today. Thank you all for tuning in to The Bad Baseball Fan. and thank you for joining me in this celebration of Black History Month. Rather than plug merch or ask you to become a member, I instead encourage you to donate your discretionary money to one of the charities I've linked in the description. Institutions like the Boys and Girls Club and the Jackie Robinson Foundation are fundamental to providing opportunities to underserved youth in our communities. Remember, if you like baseball, like this video and subscribe for more.